Hello and welcome to the DM's Book Club, where each episode, Fiona and I take a look at some Dungeons and Dragons and how we may put it in our role-playing campaigns. I added something in there. I don't know why.
Yeah, I like it. You got your own spin on the introduction now. Fantastic. I love it.
I don't know. It's because I needed to pause between the last bit to get myself to remember what it was. So I thought, I'll just chuck that in.
You're a natural improviser, Hamilton. There you go. You need to take some improv classes and then
something like that. I don't need the classes though.
You know what? I don't need to rehearse because it's all improvised. That's what
exactly.
they say.
Yeah. Why do you need to rehearse for improvisation? It doesn't make any sense.
Oh, brilliant. How are you, Hamilton? How are you doing?
I am doing very well, thank you. We've already recorded today, so this has been a busy day, hasn't it?
Very busy day, very busy content-heavy day, which is lovely, and just bits of other pieces in between, and then we're like, oh, hello again. So this is all very nice, very nice. How's RPGs? How's D&D in general for you?
RPGs, D&Ds. Yeah. So as I've been saying, I haven't been playing as much D&D. But I am writing up a Spelljammer campaign at the moment. Ooh. So I am going back into the lore of that, looking a little bit at the new stuff, which is interesting because there's some of that early doors adventure stuff that you can start having a look at.
Old monsters and everything.
Yeah, the monsters, exactly. But I'm just going back into what we looked at when we looked at the original 2E setting and going from there, really. Because to be honest, I doubt it doesn't really require, because it's the additional things to it are so additional that you can just add them in, if you know what I mean. It's not like, I'm assuming obviously there will be a real reason to buy the new one, but I'm saying if you want to get spelljamming right now, you can do, because you can just adapt those different elements of space travel and being in space to whatever your campaign is. Do you know what I mean? As in to 5e rules, because they're additional rules. They don't really rely so much on the things that are different between the two editions.
Pretty much. So. And we've said that about every sort of setting we've come across. Like, this is really cool. You can put it into 5e very soon. I think 5e and the D20 open license in general, because it's not just D&D that has that. It's very easy to port things in, and maybe that's one of the biggest strengths of it, but also one of the criticisms of it is like, well, these other RPGs we'd love to try, but people go, oh, but everyone knows 5e. So I think there's bonuses to it or not, but I think that's really cool that you're going back and looking at the stuff, because we only really looked at it this year, end
of last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's what it was. But yeah, so that's really cool actually. That it is full circle.
It is. It was useful that I could come into it a little bit less blind, if you know what I mean. Like I already had an into what it works like. I think the only thing that's concerning me slightly, and being honest about it, is the ship combat and how to navigate that in an actual play. It can be quite complex and quite ship based, and so I'm trying to figure out how I manage that. Maybe I need to get a player in the game to also be a bit of an expert on that. Like, instead of having everyone, just get someone else that I just bring along on board who becomes the sort of ship commander.
Yeah, it's the looking after the ship stuff.
Exactly. It just looks after ship stuff and also knows all the ship rules, so that I can have that sort of, I could be focusing on the ship that may be attacking them at the time and stuff like that. And also getting them feeling like, allow them to sort of DM in inverted commas that set their players, sort of saying, oh, so what are you going to do? Like, let's, be the captain sort of thing. So I think that's going to be, but it's just I'm just trying to figure that out. But
I mean, I can imagine for now, again, Spelljammer, when it comes out in a couple of months' time, it's definitely going to have its own ship combats. But you could definitely look at what Saltmarsh has given for ship combat and then base it on that as well. So obviously we've talked about this in our D&D. It's not called D&D Next. I can't remember what it's called now. The D&D Direct. You sort of correctly predicted that they're probably going for a more minis feel of it. So maybe we'll see more Spelljammer mini and assets like we did in the previous edition of it. So that will be interesting. Maybe they are banking on more people having in-person games and stuff.
I think I might set up, I don't know if I'll show it yet. Again, it's all like 2E stuff I'm all thinking about, but it's like, do I get a VTT set up with very simple star map hex grid? I could pull in the one that's from the original 2E and just use that with some images on there. Because I think it would be quite easy to set up in Tailspire, because it doesn't need space. It just needs space. It doesn't need any landmass. It just needs miniatures. And so maybe we'll do something like that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so I'm just figuring out all those sorts of things in the background. So that's my D&D. The other thing, actually, I'm looking at Pirate Borg for another mini-series, and that actually has a very simplified, very Morky-Borg OSR sort of variation of ship combat, which is very cool. You can do very limited things, and they're very easy to understand. So all pulling from all different sources.
Yeah, that's always very good, I suppose. Speaking from pulling from all different sources, yes, shall I tell you what we're doing today? What our subject?
You are the Subway queen, aren't you?
Literally. Oh God, I wish. Please sponsor this podcast, Subway.
Yes, you're like the meatball marinara of this show. I am just purely the BMT.
Oh, you're more than the BMT. You're more than
my second favourite. The meatball marinara, though,
I was
everyone does agree.
going to say you're the BMT to my meatball marinara. You're the cookies in the meal deal for me.
Whoa, Jesus Christ, that's so low. I'm not even a sandwich.
Oh no, but right, okay. Well, let me tell you what we've got going on today. So, Hamilton, we've discussed Unearthed Arcana previously. It's a nice, easy little bit of content that we can do. Something came out a couple of weeks ago, which we've only just managed to get around to chatting about because we've been very busy talking about, stuff like Ravnica and other different sort of multiplanar things as well in the background. So today we're going to look at Unearthed Arcana 2022 Giant Options.
Yes.
It's 5 pages of essentially 3 subclasses, and a bunch of feats that are related to giants and giant-like entities and such things. What did you make of this? What did you make of it when it came out, Hamilton, when you saw that next UA Giant Options?
First, I was like, okay, I really did think at first, I assumed it would be sort of a species race sort of thing, sort of like we're going to be able to play giants now. So that's cool. I'm up for that. Like, we've already got the Goliath class, the option. And so I thought, here we go, we're going to be able to play giants. I don't know how that's going to work. I thought, you'd have really low DCs, but high speed, but your AC is really low because you're massive. So like but then you've got high strength, but maybe low dex. We could, obviously with the Tasha rules, you can adjust those things. But I thought maybe that was how they would balance out the fact that you would be big. Do you know what I mean? But then there's also that ability that if you are a giant, how do you get in dungeon crawling? It always becomes a bit interesting. So what I think they've done is they thought, well, it's really hard to make giants like race work as so much in the sense of being huge. Then how do you do dungeon crawling? It requires, a lot of thought process into that for players, which I think is interesting anyway, because if you're going to do that, you make the campaign around it. So, whatever. But what they've gone for here, what is the sort of secondary, which is allowing you to become giant as much as you possibly can and sort of embody that in a way that allows you to stack things, adjust your stature. And then it surprised me with some really, really useful sort of tools that I've been like, well, actually, I just want that in D&D anyway. And I think it's needed. Yeah. The Path of the Giant, particularly Barbarian one, I thought was like triple tick.
Super fun.
Yeah, super fun.
Bit of context for this, we're at the time of recording. So they've just, in the last couple of weeks, they've retired both Volo's Guide to Monsters and Mordekainen's Tome of Foes, as saying that these books, whilst they had some good content in it, because of Monsters of the Multiverse coming out, we're retiring these 2 books because a lot of the content is in Mordekainen Presents.
Yeah.
As a result, though, in those 2 books, both Volo's and Mordekainen's, there's actually quite a bit of lore that has yet to be reproduced anywhere else, particularly giants, which I believe is in Volo's. We did it as our first episode in DM's book club. So we sort of was having this quick scour on the forums beforehand, like what would be the reason behind having this UA? And some people think maybe it's like a new adventure or campaign setting based on something coming out that involves a giant-like entities. It could be like maybe they're revamping the old, not even old adventures, was out a couple of years ago, but Storm King's Thunder, which was around the giants and their lore there. Or it could literally be a source book similar to Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, about one that's giantly based. And I was thinking about it, and as you're talking about it, I was like, so there's no necessarily lineages of giants, even though there's quite a number of them in the thing. But whereas Fizban's, it introduced the idea of the gem dragons and the gem dragonborns and all that sort of thing. Like, well, gem dragons have been around for ages. So I think it's very interesting that they've started off with, you said giant options, which is like a little testy bit to go for it.
Storm King Thunder 2. Probably more likely, isn't it?
You think, that'd be cool. Like, like the aftermath of
because
that
you could see
adventure
that then maybe your players have I've gained the benefits through. I actually haven't played Stalker. I've listened to a podcast, but they've only just hit the giant, so I don't actually know what happens at the end. So no spoilers, please. Is there a way that could have infused people, or maybe there could be some sort of bond with the giants through it? I don't know. Like maybe that's what it could be.
Yeah, which could be quite exciting. And as we discussed on this podcast previously, the giants do have this rivalry, sort of ancient grudge with dragons. So it would make sense that a source book of some sort could be in the works, or at least maybe a supplement of some sort. And I'll admit, I really enjoy like reading up on the lore about giants. There's very interesting this idea of the ordning and like how they sort of fell from grace, and there's all the different kinds of giants and how they all have their own different motivations and drives and stuff like that. So to have something like this is actually quite exciting, I think. And so yeah, like you said, we're going to look at the 3 subclasses: so Barbarian, the Path of the Giant, the Druid, Circle of the Primeval, and Wizard, the Runecrafter.
Love all 3 of them. To be honest, I must admit, I'm very much a fan.
They did a couple of videos with Jeremy Crawford about like why these subclasses and stuff, and each subclass I think has something that will go, ooh, that's really shiny. I really want to play that. I really want to do that. They bring something different, and they bring back a different aspect of a giant, or the giants as in D&D, like their sort of lore, to the classes. So yeah, I'm quite keen to see it. I will say that before we start, that on the videos that they did sort of, it kept emphasizing, we know this UA is broken. Like it's overpowered, you're giant, you're going to be super strong, it's going to be a thing. So that's fine, we know that. And I found that was interesting. That's the first time I've ever seen them going, yes, you don't need to tell us it's super broken.
But maybe it's a bit like, Strixhaven, they gave everyone spells, which does then sort of like, if you had one person in your campaign who had spells, then you'd be like, well, that's not gonna, that's unbalanced because this person's got an additional set of spells. But if everyone's got them, then it's not overpowered because you just balance the suit, don't you? And I think also we shouldn't be too scared. I mean, there's being ridiculous, and then there's, once you remove all the rules, then is it D&D anymore, I guess? So there's that argument to be had. But I think some classes, I think we've raged as much as any barbarian over level 20 abilities before. And I think that this, because I don't think actually when they get high enough, they do go overpowered enough sometimes. And I think this adds a little bit of that in. And I think also, I don't know, I think some of the items are pretty cool at low features, like when we get onto the Path of the Giant, that I think are necessary to actually overcome issues that are in the play, that can happen in play. So, which I think is fine.
Yeah. And from my point of view, again, I sort of talked to you this off podcast. I feel like, I love a challenge as a DM. So, and if I know that the party, like, oh, someone is always super strong, but the others are not so strong, well, then I need to obviously think about balancing that combat stuff. But like, if it's getting too easy, then I'm going to have to throw more stuff into it. I need to make it interesting. And why not? Like, I think it's something for me. I'd be like, yeah, I'd love to try a one shot with any of these subclass options. I don't know what this attitude of like, oh, it's too easy for the players to win. You should be supporting your players to have a good time. And it should be an exciting thing going, oh, I've got something for you in this encounter.
I think there's the excitement of being on close to sort of like losing to a certain extent, but knowing that you can overcome it and making sure your players try and achieve that in the best way, because and doing things that are cool. I know some people don't enjoy that, but I am all for rule of cool. Yeah. And so if this gives you things out the book that could do that, all the better. So then, what are they then?
Let's look at them. All right, so we said we've got this Barbarian. Let's start with that one. Barbarian, the Path of the Giant. And this is a offensive subclass, but also it could be used as a utility. And it was sort of described in the video with Jeremy Crawford as this is what embodies what Unearthed Arcana is about. This idea that you're drawing on the primal forces, that you are a giant and those sort of elemental ilk of the same thing, and you're connecting to those classic elements of what it is to be a giant. So essentially, you get bigger, you increase in size, you do elemental damage as well with your weapon. Your weapon can come back to you. You can throw your enemies or your friends across the battlefield with Mighty Impel. That's quite fun. It's just this idea that you are raw, like untamed strength, and you can just use that to embody things. And there is a bit of a 4 element into this. Like they made it sort of clear that you can play 4, and I think it makes sense that you are super strong. You're almost godlike in a way that you just use when you rage, you grow bigger, you go stronger. It's just feeds into all those elements from there.
It is really cool. I love it. It's like, it feels like, why has this not been a barbarian thing
Class
anyway
sooner.
before subclass sooner? Because it just feels like so naturally born for it. And you go to your Grog Strongjaws, who are, Goliath barbarians. It's quite a classic combination, and so it feels like this is a great sort of bonus onto that. What do you gain then?
So what do you gain? So level 3, you get 2 features. You get a giant power, where you just learn giant, essentially. And you can learn Druidcraft or Thaumaturgy as a cantrip to your choice. When again, it means like you're sort of booming, or you're connected to those elemental bits a little bit, so that makes sense. The other feature you get at 3rd level is Giant's Havoc. Your rage is of pulling strength from the primal might of giants, transforming you into a hulking force of destruction. So when you rage, you use one of your bonus actions to rage, you gain the following 2 benefits. So one is Crushing Hurl. So when you make a successful range attack with a thrown weapon using your strength, you can add your rage damage bonus to your damage roll. And I know that sounds like a lot of words, but essentially it means that you can attack from range when you're raging, and add the damage to it. Because currently you cannot do that as a barbarian. You have to be up close in the fight when you're raging.
Which to me just makes, like, as I said, is one of those things where it's like, well, this is just a factor of rage that annoys me. Like, why can't you do it?
You have to be in the centre of it. You can't go back necessarily.
I get from a sort of like, you think of it from a fundamental top-down perspective. Yes, you're a barbarian. You're meant to be front of the pack. Like you are a damage taker. You're a tank, right? However, we play D&D. There's things that fly. There's things that run away from you. It's just like
Constantly.
The most frustrating thing and it's the simplest thing. Like, if you're fighting the dragon flies 30 feet in the air, and you're the barbarian, you're like, well, what am I going to do? Someone throw me. Like,
you are constantly running behind, you're like using all your movement. I've dashed to get here, and they've teleported. And it's so irritating. Whereas if you could do it from range, you could do damage. You could do that. You have an bow and arrow, but you don't have the same effect. And that's the whole point of this class. So I think that's an excellent thing. And again, we've not had that before. And then the second benefit you get is giant stature, where your reach increases by 5 feet. So you have, a 10-foot reach at level 3, essentially, and you become large, essentially. So when you rage, you like sort of, you grow larger, and that totally makes sense. And I love that. I think again, visually, that's very cool, and also could be quite unexpected if you don't know that your new mate that you've met in the jail has suddenly just hulked out, essentially, and is bigger, and is like, where are you going? And you're like, no,
get over here. But it makes so much sense, because it gives you, not only does this now give you a range attack, but it also gives you 10 foot of space to play with as the barbarian who's fighting. I use cleaving rules in my D&D, particularly my barbarians. When I had a home game, my barbarian utilized that way too much. But it was great, because like, I did check in with players, because they were taking a lot of the kills because of the low level minions, but everyone was like, that's kind of what they're meant to do. Then if they had a 10-foot range, I'd totally allow them just to go boof, 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 just minion. I'd just add more minions in and allow them just to be, because that will keep them busy, and then I can go and attack my wizard, because that's what and then they can make those decisions on the fly, and it gives you so much more. I think it just makes it so much more fun.
Instantly, you're like, this is so cool as a result. Adding your rage damage to your range attack, and becoming bigger. There we go. Get through it. Then level 6, you get this elemental cleaver. So what we were saying about before.
Triple tick.
Yeah, triple tick. When you enter your rage, you can infuse one weapon of your choice that you're holding with one of the following damages. So acid, cold, fire, thunder, and lightning. That weapon's damage type changes to that chosen type, and it deals an extra d6 of that damage when it hits, and gains the thrown property, which is so it's like so cool as a result. So it changes that whole weapon property to that again is very cool. And if you hit or miss, it reappears back in your hand. And then your bonus action is that you can change the current damage type to another one. So as we know, acid really early on, it's poison, I think. That's not in there. But things become immune to acid later up. You're like, great, I'm just going to change that to cold damage or fire or anything. Like, it's not out of they're not ridiculous damage stuff.
You can imagine it, can't you? Like, you got like your hammer, or you got your, I'm imagining axe, right? And you've got this burning axe, and you just go cut through, and then you go ice, axe, like to like sort of like overdo it, and you'd just be like you'd imagine them flipping the axe around as a bonus action to change the thing, or like casting a rune over it, and then another attack. And all it's doing is what I did when we talk about rogues is making me super excited about playing a barbarian. Like I've always liked to play a barbarian. I've played one before in a one shot, but this makes me go like, tick. Now all the things that have put me off a barbarian have all been solved by this.
Yeah, and it's a great use of a bonus action as well. Like, you know, because there's maybe not so much as a barbarian that you would do with your bonus action necessarily, apart from raging, right? Level 10, then, Mighty Impel. So this is the one, the hurling people one, essentially. Yeah. For a bonus action, when you rage, you can choose one medium or smaller creature within your reach, so that 10-foot reach comes back, and you can move it to an unoccupied space you can see within 30 feet of yourself. And obviously, an unwilling creature must succeed on a strength saving throw, which it will probably lose because you're going to be super strong. If at the end of its movement the thrown creature isn't on a surface or a liquid it can support, the creature falls, taking damage as normal and landing prone. So you could just pick up something and then throw it, 30 feet up into the air, essentially straight up, and then or a little bit further around. So you can have so much fun with this. So, and this obviously includes friends and allies as well. If you're like, I need to get over there, you're like, excellent, and you could just throw them. You want to scoot them across the battlefield. Essentially, they don't have to necessarily arc it in such a way. So I think that's really cool. You can scoot people across the battlefield for a bonus action.
No, I think that's it, and it's exactly that. Again, it's just going back to those dragon fights, and you've got someone who's a fighter who is very good at melee combat. It's like, chuck me up there, like I want to land, go and grab onto the dragon, and then start like, I don't know. It's those sorts of battles that you're just coming to mind and just making you really just more versatile in those scenarios.
Finally, the 14th level, and I'm going to say this from Demiurge Colossus more. Basically, it just everything increases again. So now your reach is 10 foot. Oh, so maybe it was only 5 foot before, sorry, and then it's 10 foot now.
No, it increases by 10 foot, so it's now 15
15.
Foot.
And there you go. Whoa, that's ridiculous. And now you are now huge, and then you can move creatures with your Mighty Impel that are larger or smaller, so rather than medium than smaller, and the damage of your elemental cleaving, which
makes me think now, party of barbarians throwing each other at things. Like, you know what I mean? Because now at that level, you could be large, so you're both large, you both just like chucking barbarians at dragons or something.
It's like, take aim, fire.
Yeah. The other thing is, I just like, a party's going to come to a chasm, and they're going to be like, well, how far's the chasm? It's 25 foot. Rage! Chuck everyone! Just keep hitting yourself to keep the rage going.
Punch
it's just
in the
a bonus
face.
action.
Go! Yeah, you punch them in the face, they throw you. Yeah,
exactly. I want to add that as like a way to like, you can pay a toll at the bridge has been broken, and there's just a barbarian there who just throws people across for money. You have to punch them to then get thrown across.
It's very much like that Monty Python Holy Grail, where there's the bridge, and you have to answer truthfully a question. It's like, what's your favourite colour? And you're like, blue. No, wait. And you just fall off like that. You just do that with a giant throwing you off. All right, let's move on to the second subclass then. This is the Druid subclass, so the Circle of Primeval. Now, this one has a tagline, which I absolutely love, which is that though the land may change over time, it never forgets. So instantly you're like, ooh.
Elephants.
No, older than elephants. We're going proper prehistoric with this one. We're going dinos. And again, in the video with Jeremy Crawford, he was just like, we want dinosaurs.
Can I just say, I'm going to be honest here, I just did not get the dinosaur thing until you mentioned it. I was just like, oh yeah, like big animals. Yeah, I guess so. I just didn't, I know it says raptors and saber-toothed tigers, but I was just thinking like ancient predators. Like, oh, okay, like, yeah, that's like one, but I didn't think all like completely, oh yeah, this is all about dinosaurs. I don't know why,
but I think that they flavored it in such a way so that it's like I think maybe the first thought for many people like, oh yeah, I want to have a dinosaur, a stegosaurus as my thing, or a raptor. Raptors again, it makes sense because they're slightly smaller, but it does say like, basically it's more spirits that are bonded, that they take on forms of ancient predecessors to today's common beasts and other fantastical titanic creatures. So you could easily just make up something or go and have a look and go, yes, a saber-toothed tiger or something, or just like a woolly mammoth or something like that. It could be any of those things, which I think is really, really cool. And it's this idea we've talked about druids very recently on DM's Book Club, but this idea that they're part of these sort of organizations or societies that for this one, the Circle of Primeval, they spend their lives delving into the long forgotten places and preserving the remnants of bygone eras. Very similarly, this particular subclass, it's sort of very related to other classes we have. So, for example, with the Ranger and Beastmaster, we've got the Artificer and the Battlesmith. They're sort of that subclass with the Steel Defender, and also Druids and the Wildfowl Spirit as well. So that having a companion or something with you, like a tool or whatnot, which can, or a creature, sorry, that can help you and aid you in battle and with your quests as well. So that's what they're trying to do here. And I think this works to an extent. It does feel like, I think beforehand you'd be like, oh, it has to be Ranger Beastmaster if you wanted something similar to this. But now they're like, why can't Druids have it? And it makes more sense with the Druids, with the ancient connections to the earth as well. So I think the flavour of it's really good.
I feel like I've always been surprised that and it was something I was going to bring up when we maybe talk about Rangers soon, that it seems weird that Druids haven't yet really got the Beastmaster. Like, obviously they wild shape, but this is just like, well, just alter wild shape to companion and you've got it. And like, why wouldn't a Druid be able to have like, you know, you imagine the Druid with a hawk or an owl beside them, you know, or something like that. You know, that seems like quite a classic trope that hasn't really been explored. And so I'm quite interested in this. Yeah,
it's interesting. Again, it's just that's just reminded me, in the video itself, Jeremy Crawford was talking about like, not everyone who plays a Druid wants to be shape changing all the time. And like wild shape is obviously the big thing with Druids, right? They can do this amazing thing. So here, obviously, you can use their wild shape to call forth the creature of their choice. You know, and it's just another way of using that wild shape. I just thought that was really interesting, that this idea of somebody, it's just that rather than be like, well, I change, it's like, no, you're still connected and you're using those the nature connection to complete your work rather than you changing. And I just thought, that makes total sense.
I'm totally up now to adding to any Druid class the ability to alter your wild shape now to you have a companion instead. I'm like, because I think it's just, it seems so obvious. And I know people, and I've put my note, I said, why not just have an extra character? It's kind of like, that was my response to people that might say, oh, but then they can still use, they've got an action, and then only using their bonus action, that they get a whole extra character. I'm like, well, yeah, why not? Like, why not? Like, I don't think that's a problem. It gives them more they have to keep an eye on in the game, so it makes it slightly harder for them, as well as, like, why not allow the team to have extra things?
Why not? Why can't they bring along their huge, like, ancient snapping turtle that is, like, that does the job? Because that's the thing, it's not necessarily looking at... So they have their own Primeval companion stat block, where quite a lot of these subclasses that have... what's the word for it? Yeah, a companion or something like that you can use on as your bonus action. They don't necessarily scale up in the sense of, like, it's still, like, a 1d8 plus something. It's not like 5d8 if you're doing a spell or if you're hit. It's still peanuts. I would think you just get an extra chance to do a bit more damage, and that's everyone wants that. You know, it's just another attack on using something else. So
I mean, I might even I think I'd have to look at it in more detail. But if someone wanted to go even to the, like, whatever your B shape can do, you can just make that a companion. I'm happy for that. I might even say that and see how that works. I think that would be interesting to play.
Testing it out, absolutely. Yeah. So looking at the features of this class, so these ones, and I think this is quite common with the Druid circles. But forgive me if I get this wrong. But they start at level 2, getting the circle stuff out. So you get Keeper of Old. So that means that you just get insight into the ancient world, essentially. So you just gain some proficiencies and stuff, which means you can roll a d4 whenever you make a history check and add that to the number of the ability. I mean, I don't make too many history checks, but that'd be quite cool. Again, if you're planning to, I think Druids are, we've talked about this before on DM's Book Club, they're very interesting and you can really add lots of cool lore if you including a lot of Druids, or if you want to include different circles, and so that'd be quite cool to have as a way of getting lore out. The other feature you get at level 2, which is, we've mentioned it already, this Primeval companion. So you expend one of your wild shape slots and it appears in front of you. It's friendly to you and your companions and it obeys your commands, blah 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 blah. The only thing I wasn't sure about is like how long your companion is with you for.
Remains until it's reduced to 0 hit points or until you die, at which point the companion vanishes.
But if you're using your wild shape, you get your wild shape back. You see what I mean? Like, where I don't know, for me, because you're using a resource.
No, but it says if you use this feature to summon the companion again and you already have one present, the first companion immediately vanishes. Yeah, you will gain your wild shape back, but you can't have 2 companions.
I guess because for me, that wild shape, as far as I remember, it's like you're there for an hour. You change yourself for an hour. So then why does that not connect to your companion. Like I agree. Like you should have your companion with you for as long as you want it to. Like the ranger has it, and the artificer has it. You don't you don't use a spell slot to have those things. But I just thought, that's interesting. Like there's not for me, there's not that connected, but it doesn't make any difference really.
I know, because technically, if it doesn't get hit, then it can last, and you've got like it for infinity, technically, haven't you? Sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think you are not gaining other things that other subclasses will gain benefits wise. Like you're not gaining any spores. Druid is not picking up like your AoE effects and stuff like that. That balances it out slightly. So because really all you're doing is you're using up another slot for something new just to gain really an extended version of what you already have.
Yeah. Pretty much. But that was the only thing I had on that. I was like, is there a time limit? If not, then what does that mean? But ultimately, it doesn't matter really, as long as you just make a note of it, that when you rest, the creature doesn't disappear and you get your thing back as well. Moving on then to the 6th level feature, you get a prehistoric conduit.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how you pronounce that, but never mind.
Prehistoric conduit, yeah.
Conduit, okay. That's how I pronounce it. If you cast a spell with a range other than self, the spell can originate from you or your primeval companion. That's so cool. You could just send your saber-toothed tiger or your woolly mammoth to the other side of the battlefield, and it's like, okay, heal the person there, or chain lightning. I don't think that's a druid spell, but you could do certain spells like that.
Mold earth, tidal wave. There you go. Cool spells.
Yeah. Oh man, could you imagine tidal wave through a woolly mammoth's trunk?
Yes, exactly. Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's cool. And you also get Primeval has advantage on saving throws if it's confected by the spell you cast that allows creatures to make saving throws against its effects. So I don't know, if it gets caught in an AoE, it gets an advantage against it, basically.
Yeah, and if it it's very much like a evasion, that sort of thing. It's like, if it succeeds, it takes no damage, and it takes all that sort of thing, which is very useful because you don't want to damage your lovely little creature. Level 10, we have Titanic Bond. Your primeval companion grows to large, and you can grant it either a climbing speed or a swimming speed equal to its walking speed, which is pretty fun. That's pretty cool. Again, I can now imagine that actually your creature is like like an underwater creature, but like prehistoric, so it can breathe on land and in water. That'd be quite fun. Once per turn, whilst your companion is summoned, when you hit a creature with an attack or deal damage to a creature you can see with a spell, you can force that creature to make a wisdom saving throw against the spell save DC, and on a failure, that creature is frightened of you until your next turn. So it's that idea, like you're facing down something, and then behind you, you've got your huge companion, your large companion, like looking down, and that's why, you better run. And it's really because you've got your woolly mammoth behind you.
Can I say what I wrote down on this next one, Scourge of the Ancients?
Absolutely, yeah. Level 14, this feature.
I wrote, yes, Megazord! That's what I wrote, because I was like, yes! Because at this 14th level, you have learned to fully harness the titanic legacy of your companion. As part of the bonus action you can use to command your companion, you can expend a spell slot at any level to heighten your primeval companion's might, granting it the following benefits. First one, hulking behemoth. The companion is huge and gains hit points equal to 10 times instead of 5 times. Mauler. On a hit, the companion stride deals an additional damage equal to 1d8 plus the level of the spell spot.
That's pretty good.
So if you expended, what can they go up to? 6th, can they? Druids?
Druids are like they're full. Yeah, they're full spellcasters, so they can get to 9.
So that could be 9d8 if you so wish, and the walking speed increases by a number of feet equal to 5 times the level of the spell slot. But all I was imagining, it only lasts for an hour. This one, team of Druids. This is where I was having my Rick and Morty I was talking about earlier, where you get a team of Druids to get like 5 different dino robot things that then all connect to create a giant super dino robot. And that's all I had in my mind.
No, I like that. I'm thinking more
Power Ranger.
I'm thinking more like, like Digimon, and there's sort of like they powering up and all that sort of thing. But that Mauler could be really fucking cool. Like you're like, okay, I've got to give it all I got. I do have some offensive spells, but you know what? My primeval companion, that's a wild shape, and 9th level, they're going to do a lot of damage. So before when I was
Megazord.
When I said before, they doesn't bounce up, you can easily power your creature up, and that's Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So good.
I feel there's a lot of flavor you can have with it. Like we said, it could be dinosaurs, but it could be anything. I just thought, that's a really cool way of doing druids that aren't necessarily not changing themselves to be nature, but they're influenced and they're connected to that primeval connection to nature and stuff. So yeah, 100%. Love that one.
They're really cool. Really cool. So the third one, then, Fiona.
Yeah, the third one. So this is the wizard subclass of Runecrafter. Yeah, instantly. Oh, cool. Runecrafter wizards enhance their spellcasting through the ancient power of runes. Shock. The runecraft magic has been expanded to encompass countless languages and practitioners across different worlds. So I love that idea that no matter where you are in the multiverse, you will meet people who do the same thing as you, but maybe do it slightly differently, but they're all connected by this one overarching theme of runes, which is quite cool. For many rune crafters, the runes they wield are every bit unique and personal as their spellbooks.
Yeah. Makes me think of like cuneiforms as much as actual like Nordic runes and stuff. So you can go for like quite different variations of hieroglyphs and stuff like that. You know, you can just imagine so many sort of ancient linguistics that you could influence. Because we've been doing a bit of plain stuff, and there's quite a lot on the sort of Egyptian pantheon in there. But there are so many out there in the world, and people bring it, like, you know, the great thing about wizards now actually bringing in more outside influences than the sort of Eurocentric that we're used to. I'd be really interested in, I'm really looking forward to so much more of that. And imagine this wizard, and then when we get to those sorts of stories, I think this could be utilized quite well and adapted quite well.
I agree. So yeah, it's that idea that they're enhancing their spell casting through this ancient power of runes and applying it. And it was interesting, again, in the video for this, Jeremy Crawford was like, whilst we have like the bard who is the spoken word person of the group, wizards are more the written word person of the group, because they have the spell books and stuff like that. So that idea that they're amplifying their spells through this thing and tweaking it and stuff like that. And that's actually a really cool idea. I hadn't really considered that. Like, obviously, wizards, again, we've not really done an episode on wizards particularly, but this idea that they always have to have a spell book, and the way they do spell casting is slightly different because they don't gain their spells naturally compared to, say, sorcerers. They have to learn it, they have to buy, and it's always reading, stuff like that. So again, it makes total sense that this would have it. There's a sibling class to this, a sibling subclass, which is known as the Rune Knight. That's in Tasha's, which I unfortunately didn't have a quick look at. Yes. It has similar things where they use runes to enhance their weapon skills, essentially.
I'd forgotten about that one, actually, which is that's a good point, and I should have gone back and read it.
Yeah, me too.
So what they get then is second level, they gain 2 abilities. First is the Runes of Understanding, which is that you unlock the ability to understand and decode runes and languages regardless of their origin. You always have Comprehend Languages prepared, so you can cast it without expending a spell slot, and the spell doesn't count against the number of spells you have prepared. So that is actually so useful, because the amount of times I've actually used when I'm playing a wizard, I'm going to probably need Comprehend Languages. Is always useful, because then you don't have to worry about the party's language base, and you just it's always a good like dungeoneering tool. As much as anything. And
I think it's one of those things where, like, so you always ask, like, what languages do people know? And then they'll be like, Dwarven and Gnomish. And they're like, nope. You just say, nope, no one's going to, no, you can't read it. And I'm like, oh, that's a shame. Because I think, and that's the thing with all puzzles, right? Or anything like that, when you have a bit of writing, it's like, oh, you can't read it, but you recognize it as this. And you're like, okay, it's up to then the player to go, right, well, we'll go get this transcribe and stuff. And it's like that, I feel that's stopping the story a little bit. And okay, maybe it's a bit of like a, it's not ex machina, but it is like it's Deus ex machina. That idea that you just so happen to know the language. Oh, move the story along. Just tell them what it says. Like, oh, but you recognize it's in this origin. Yeah, so this makes total sense. Like you said, having Comprehend Languages at will. You're like, oh well, I read that. It's actually just a leaflet.
So then the next one you get is a Runic Empowerment. So when you choose the subclass, you learn how to amplify your magic through the application of runes. So it just gives you some flavor there of like how that could be. It could be that they're on your spell book. They glow they glow like in front of you, like as you cast a spell. I was also thinking like Witcher, using those runes that they do to sort of like cast. What's it called? I can't even think of any of them now. I used to play so much of it, but like Afri or whatever. I can't remember what its name is, but like Igni and stuff like that, and all that. And you can imagine those sort of coming out in the space, or you sort of mark them with your hands, which reminds me of that fantastic Over Isles by Hatchling Games, which uses the ASL and BSL sign language. And so, if that's which is a beautiful, it's a whole beautiful game and story. And as someone who learned sign language with my daughter, it's it's just a really interesting way to embody that. And if someone
that's
wants
really
to use
cool.
that, I think that's great.
I think that'd be really cool as a way, having maybe incorporating that, sensitively, obviously, making sure people learn of it into something like that. That'd be so cool. I really like that idea.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I'm just thinking if it's a way to just to bring that knowledge in, if people want to bring that in, sort of thing, if they have it, sort of thing. So I think that's cool. And then with that, it allows you then to, when you cast a spell using a spell slot, you can invoke one of the following runes. Now, first one, I'm like, good God, if there are no healers, this is so useful. And as someone who has been in parties that don't have a healer, like the only healer they had was a ranger, which is not exactly the best healer.
No, because they've got other stuff to be getting on with. So exactly. Absolutely.
So having this, the life rune, when you invoke this rune, choose one creature you can see within 30 feet of you. You can choose yourself, and the chosen creature gains temporary hit points equal to 5 times the level of the spell slot expended, which every time you're using a spell, which as a wizard you're doing quite a lot, that can be pumping out a good load of temporary hit points, to people. It doesn't say it doesn't stack. I assume it doesn't. It does. I
assume it doesn't stack because temporary hit points tend not to stack in general.
Yeah, it just doesn't say. It says you can invoke no more than one rune per spell, and you can use feature of number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. But I don't see. It doesn't technically say that you could cast it 3 times on the same person.
They get damaged, you do it again. Yeah. It's not like that. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Then the next one is the war rune. When you invoke this rune, you choose one creature within 30 feet until the end of your next turn. Attack rolls that target the chosen creature gain a bonus equal to half the level of the spell slot expended. So it's basically more like Hunter's Mark, but for everyone in a sense. So you mark a creature that you're fighting, and you give people a bonus to round up to a minimum of 1. On attacks, which is useful, and
always good.
Yeah, and finally the wind rune, which is more of a defensive one. Yeah, exactly. Your speed increases by a number of feet equal to 5 times the level of the spell slot, and your movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks to it. I think is a really good one because particularly for wizards who are, glass cannons, as they're well known, that if you find yourself, crap, I've actually somehow just been surrounded. All right, I'm going to cast a bit of an AoE attack, and so I can actually use an effect and gain an ability to expeditious retreat without having to use expeditious retreat.
Pretty much. And that particular one, the wind rune, those benefits last until the start of your next turn. So you get out of there essentially, which is very useful. Always interesting ones. Any spell or any effect that affects your movement, because I always think like, why do I need that? And I realise it's because I never play a wizard or glass cannon characters. So I'm like,
Miss Barbarian over here.
Yeah, I know. So I'm like, whoops. And so I'm like, that would make a lot more sense to have that. And that's quite good. So you can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and then gain them back on the long rest. So that makes sense. So it increases, and you could just easily, like you said, spend everything one turn after another, going, life rune, and then you're like, right, that's me done for the rest of the fight, folks.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But it's very useful, and I think having giving everyone the ability to have some form of like healing ability is definitely useful in any party. So
agreed.
Because if you're in a party when you've just got a cleric and they go down, you're like, everyone looks around going, better get them up sometime soon. And you're like,
exactly.
But they're surrounded by 5 werewolves. So next then, 6th level is Sigils of Warding. You can call on a rune of protection to guard yourself against threats. When you fail a strength, dex, or con saving throw, you can use your reaction to expend 1 use of your runic empowerment and succeed on the saving throw instead. Which
That's
again,
really cool.
Really good, really useful.
And that's at level 6.
Particularly again, as strength, dex, and con are not generally, they are your dump stats. And so if you've got one of those that you always know is dump, you can just say, well, I'm just going to succeed that saving throw. And that's a really great sort of addition.
I wonder if they'll change that one to that you can roll a d6 and add it to your thing, because I feel like I don't know any others that are like, you instantly succeed, because instantly I wrote down like a legendary resistance. You can just choose to succeed if you expend that reaction, because a reaction you're like, fine, whatever.
But you still take half damage on something, mainly on those sorts of ones. It doesn't it doesn't affect as much. What I think is interesting, that actually what you're going to be attacking wizards with sometimes is actually intelligence-based things, because you want to like stop them from actually casting sometimes. But then sometimes you go about that through like grappling and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think it's kind of like, it'd be a nice play of like, he's casting. He needs to do somatic components. So hold his hands, and then you go to grapple, and it's like, oh, I'm out.
Bye.
Spells.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's kind of fun in that way. But
I think that's quite fun.
And the more we can rogue up people, I'm totally up for that.
I was going to say, instantly I was like, oh, that sounds like a Hamilton special. So it's all good.
Exactly. Just adding rogue to every class.
Yeah, pretty much.
What's the next one then, Fiona? I've talked a lot about these people.
So level 10, we have the Rune Maven. I know.
You see why I took over.
I understand it now. So at level 10, we have the Rune Maven. And so this, basically, your understanding of Runecraft is just increased immensely, essentially. So you now have the Arcane Recovery feature, which is a Wizard's classic, where essentially on a short rest, you can regain a number of your expended uses of. Normally, it would be a spell slot on a short rest, but now you can also regain a number of expended uses of runic empowerment. So those runes we talked before, that's really useful. And you can, it tells you can regain no more than up to half your intelligence modifier. So you can't regain them all, perhaps, but you can regain some. That's useful, and it makes sense because it's a one-off thing. I think you can do like when you rest, you like or when you use that feature, and then you gain it back on a long rest. So yeah, I think that's a really really cool one essentially. So you get both a spell slot and some runic empowerment back. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, because it says you also regain a number, so I think that's really good because it doesn't remove it from one or the other.
It's not one or the other. Yeah, exactly.
The next one, I kind of like. It's a good utility feature. So what's that one?
This one, so level 14 is Engraved Enmity. Words. So as a bonus action, I know, pronunciation guides, please, wizards. I know that's just a normal word as well, so I just need wizards to do pronunciation guides on everything.
Right, phonetically.
Right, yes, please, absolutely. So as a bonus action, you can target one creature you can see within 60 feet of yourself. They must succeed on a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC, or be magically marked by an enmity rune. It appears as a faintly glowing mote of energy that hovers over the marked creature, which suffers the following effects, which I take to mean all of these effects. So the first one is Runecraft's Bane. So the creature has disadvantages on saving throws made against spells you cast. That's just a blanket thing. That's quite hard. Yeah. Unveiled enemies. The radiance of the glowing runes make the creature visible if it is invisible, and the creature cannot become invisible whilst the rune persists. That's pretty useful. Yeah, there they are. They're not moving, or they're moving away. You can see that. And then finally, Woeful Curse. When you mark a creature, and as a bonus action on subsequent turns, choice of duration, you can invoke the rune to curse the creature until the start of your next turn. The next time one of your allies hits the cursed creature with an attack roll, the target also takes 1d8 force damage, and the curse ends. So extra damage as well. So it can be seen. They have disadvantages on any spells put against them, and they also take extra damage if it hits with an attack roll. That's pretty good.
So good.
Yeah, and that lasts to the end of your next turn, I think.
And so you can cast that as a bonus action every turn, basically, to add the Woeful Curse without adding it. So it just means they attack, use up the curse, then you have to reuse that bonus action for the next one, so long as it lasts, basically.
But that's right. The rune itself lasts for 1 minute, unless or until you lose your concentration, which makes sense because you're concentrating on marking that creature, and then bonus action giving that damage as well, which is pretty cool.
You can also, it's a long rest, so you can't do it, just once until your long rest, or unless you use a spell slot 3rd level or higher to use it again.
Which is good.
I think this is a really good one. If you've got an enemy that you know is a flight risk that wants to go invisible, it's really great for that, to make sure you've got them. Giving disadvantage against anything that your spells are doing is really good. If you've got someone who's got a high save DC, they're really high statted, and you can just at least put that disadvantage on, you're giving yourself that chance, aren't you, to make those spells land. I'm just thinking in my mind, like Curse of Strahd, if you're fighting someone high level, like a high level lich or something like that, or this is where these things become really useful.
Yeah, it absolutely. It helps
level 14
debuff them. It debuffs them in a way, because even though they might go, I'm going to fail this. Why? I'll use a legendary resistance. You're like, okay, well then I've used that up using this enmity thing, and they're still marked, and we can still see them, etc. So I think overall it's really, I think that's a really cool one. So all three of these subclasses, I've picked out really interesting things that I wouldn't necessarily consider before. That certainly the Runecraft one, I will say I would not necessarily associate it with giants, but I like it. I think it's really cool. All of them are cool, and they actually just provide something different to each of the
It's what makes me feel more about campaign setting, because that's the one that really goes to something primordial and sort of, of like ancient era. So it just makes me think it because it doesn't necessarily relate directly, as you said, to giants. So I feel it's a campaign setting based on that only, and I think that's really interesting. Maybe it's a Nordic one, like maybe we're going down that route, because everyone, they've mentioned Thor, and giants are very prevalent in the Nordic pantheon, as we've talked about in our sister show that we might be doing sometime, in some spell and planes and stuff, and so I don't know, that makes I love all of them though. I think all of them make a big change actually to the classes that they're playing with, in a way that it makes barbarians more versatile. It makes druids much more again, not so much more versatile, but much more like just adds a complete different function
element to it.
And then the Runecrafter again makes them more of a utility caster than sometimes a wizard can. I mean, wizards can be, because they can do anything, and I think that comes down to spell choice, but it inherently makes them more utility, which I think is interesting.
Some exciting things there, I think, and I will be keen to see. Like, I'm very tempted. I think we're all going to be tempted by the barbarian thing, but I'm actually quite tempted by that wizard one. Actually, I think because you could properly work out, like, oh well, this will work. This combination here and this combination here with these spells. I think you can get a lot with them. And we'll finish off this episode by sort of having a quick glance through the 10 feats they've given us.
A lot.
There is a lot, and again, it follows that similar thing to previous UA. So when we talked about the Heroes of Kryn stuff, some of these feats are sort of locked by prerequisites of certain levels, which is good. But they kind of break down into 3 sort of big categories, essentially. The first category is the rune feats, which again, I presumably related to that Runecrafter thing, but it's like Rune Carver Apprentice and Rune Carver Adept. You can't get the Adept without taking the first, the Apprentice one first, and even then, once you take that one, it's level 4, and they're pretty good, I think. Let me just get them here to read them out. Apprentice. So you've begun studying the art of the Runecraft, which allows you to temporarily mark your items and imbue them with magic. So when you finish a long rest, you can mark a non-magical weapon, armor, piece of clothing, or other object, and touch it with a rune of your choice. That you can temporarily learn one level 1 spell and put it in this thing, and it's got a very cool list, I think, of the different spells you can put in. Now, this is very cool because it's, again, not just for you, but you can give it to somebody else. I think, like, you can, like, or associate it with it. So other wizard stuff has done it before, where you can imbue objects with spells that you can use, like, as a one-off. This is really cool.
Okay, with my highlighter pen, just went all over it, because I was like, this is incredible. I love this. I think it's it's got so much like character to the idea of it, the sort of ability to hand over things to other people. I think it's fantastic, because the Moon Touch blade is always something I think of as like one I've always loved as a spell, when you can add a blade with the Moon Touch ability. And so, like, I just think being able to do that as the wizard every day, being able to just like embody, you can imagine a very good role playing between 2 characters that have quite a bond. One is a wizard, one is like maybe a barbarian or some sort of melee class, and it's about your connection between the 2 of you, about and adding these, adding the armor of Agathis to your
putting like the frost rune on like an armor, and then it or like a gauntlet or something like that, and it just spreads all over you. Very cool.
I think that's really cool.
And the only thing with the Adept one is that now you become skilled with it, is that every time you finish a long rest, you can mark a number of objects equal to your proficiency bonus with a rune. And it sounds it's a different rune on each object. So then you could literally have a class of like of up to 5, I think. I can't remember what it is on Wizards per se.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So
high level, you would be able to do that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, these level 1 spells, they're not to be sniffed at. They're all really, really good. So I'm just like thinking, So it doesn't have to be wizard based. I appreciate I said that because of the runecrafting.
This is your the Captain Planet based campaign I've always wanted to do, because you go fire, snow, wind, earth, together we are Captain Planet. He's a hero.
That's amazing. Everyone puts like twigs and stones together.
Exactly.
Or
the runes.
Somebody puts the runes together and then they form. Oh, amazing.
You just all have rings that are just like blank signet rings, and then you just embody them with the rune every day, and then and it's like you just can imagine, like, you've got the leader character you give heroism to, and then you've got someone like the druid, you give them Thunderwave, and then the cleric you give Sanctuary, and then you give to the fighters said like an Armor of Agathis at the front, and Burning Hands to someone else, and it's just like blood, false life, and stuff like that. I don't know, it's just amazing. I just think that's so cool.
I think for me those two are the coolest ones I wasn't expecting. I think that's the thing from that. Absolutely. Yeah. The second category is just basically giant themed ones. Which are cool. So like it goes through all that sort of thing. So you got the level 4 ones, you got the vigor of the hill giant, the keenness of the stone giants, and the fury of the frost giants. Each one of these feats, I will say, so those ones are level 4. Each one of these feats, they'll have two parts to it. Usually some sort of increase in stat or something like that. So usually resistance to something or something else, and then some sort of like thing you can do in combat as well. The one thing I wanted to mention, I will say in the video, they kind of poo-pooed the vigor of hill giants. It's like, it's nothing like some of the other ones. But I think it's pretty good. So I'll just read it out. So you manifest the resilience of the hill giants, granting you the following benefits. Now, and I'll say this, hill giants are at the bottom rung of the ordning. They are, they're just moving along. They eat a lot. So like very typical. But they have two things. So they have bulwark. So when they're subject to an effect that moves you in at least 5 feet or will knock you prone, you can use reaction to steady yourself. And then you're neither moved or progress. That's brilliant. Because the amount of times people are like, Thunderwave, you're not prone. You're like, no, reaction, I'm not moving.
Yeah, exactly. Love it.
That's cool. And then Hearty Health. When you're subjected to a spell that restores your hit points, you can gain additional hit points equal to your Constitution modifier. These additional hit points a number of times equal to proficiency bonus, and then getting them on the long rest. That's brilliant. I think that's such a cool, I guess, because obviously like hill giants, you may be like, they're not as like elemental or anything like that. So what? That's such a cool feat. I think more people will be taking that because then you can't get it. I thought that was such a cool one.
I think the other ones are very much on the nose. Frost Giant gives you resistance to cold damage. Fire Giant gives you resistance to fire damage. Yeah, it's very much there. I don't know if we need to. The Stone Giant, you get some cool Dreamer's magic. You can detect thoughts. Guile of the Cloud Giant, I like that. You get the Blur spell, which is really cool.
Yeah,
and Silver Tongue, you gain proficiency in either the Deception or Persuasion skill. Yeah, which I think is quite cool.
Cloud Giants are they're very cool in their lore. They have this thing where they have masks to show emotion rather than their own face. And the more masks you have, the more rich and more powerful you are. So you have all these sort of Phoenician masks. Yeah, very cool. Anyway, sorry, because that's the coolest thing about them.
That's cool. And then the Storm Giant is the Maelstrom Aura. You bonus action, you surround yourself in an aura of a magical wind and lightning that extends 10 feet from you. The aura lasts for 1 minute or until you're incapacitated. Attack rolls against you have disadvantage. When they take force damage if they start their turn in there. It's very much like swirling warding wind, I think, is the spell that you get as a wizard. And Storm's Oracle, you get a divination spell as a ritual without using material components, which is kind of interesting.
That's pretty cool. So that Storm, Cloud, and Fire Giant, those are 8th level, because they're a little bit more, again, going up the ordning a little bit more cool. But even then, I feel 8th level, because they are very difficult creatures. Their challenge rates are very, very high. So I was like, maybe, I don't know, I would put them at a higher level to unlock as a prerequisite, but maybe that's just me because I know they're so cool. Again, because I'm very biased. They're very cool, but they're very dangerous.
You like giants, exactly.
I like giants. And then the final one, the sort of miscellaneous category, I should say. There's 2 left in this. There's the elemental touched And then there's the outsized might. Outsized might makes sense. It's just like you gain a proficiency, sort of like in the athletics or acrobatic skill. You count as one size larger. You have advantage on saving throws against being moved or knocked prone. So it's just like you're slightly like tougher. It's not as hill giant-esque. Like
you actually aren't one size larger. You only count larger when determining your carrying capacity and amount you can push, drag, or lift.
Apologies. So you can carry more. That's right. Yes. Yeah. So that's okay. It's a little flavoursome, I guess. But like I think compared to that, the bigger of the hill giant, it's not so much. But the elemental touched. This is your last airbender stuff.
I was like, yeah, but I also thought, you know what? I know who's not going to like the air one.
It's me. Hello.
It's you. It's Fiona. Yeah.
Yeah. Neither feats need a prerequisite either, so you could get this really early on. So you can basically learn. So you learn either Druidcraft or Thaumaturgy. Yep, makes sense. And when you finish a long rest, you can choose an element you attune to: air, earth, fire, and water. And depending on your choice, use a bonus action to do one of the following effects. And so, you can imagine air, you gain a flying speed or walking speed to the end of your turn. It's only to the end of your turn, so that's not too bad.
I know, yeah.
The earth, you can cause the earth within 30 feet of you to become difficult terrain for a minute, or until you create this effect again. During that time, you can move across the ground. So that's quite cool if you're like, oh, balls, like, you get down and then you're tootling off there, and you're like, oh no, and then tootling across back. I think that's quite good.
Yeah.
But of course, that kind of leaves your allies a bit stuck, I guess.
Yeah, it does.
Fire, you surround yourself in a cloud of ash and smoke, and then your movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. That's pretty good.
Again, gives you a bit of roguishness. And
then finally, water, you create a forceful surge of water directed at a creature within 15 feet of you that you can see. Must make a strength saving throw against a DC, or be pushed 10 feet away. So no damage, but you can just like push them away. Very cool. Again, yeah, like I was thinking like Airbender. Yeah, like force push, essentially just like get them out of the way. It's really cool.
That's a good shout. Yeah.
You can create these effects equal to a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus and gain them back on the long rest. None of those effects are attacking and they don't do any damage. It's just more like getting you out of something Yeah, and I think that's great. I think that's the thing, because as soon as you have one that is a bit of attacking one, people are always going to go, well, I'm going to attack. I'm going to use that because why wouldn't you? Makes total sense. But here you've got like you can get away by flying. You can make the terrain around you difficult. You can cover yourself in smoke. You can push people away. So yeah, all those things very, very helpful. I think just using the elements and using that primeval sort of elemental thing to push people away. So really interesting. Yeah. I'm very excited about this AE. This UA. I am so curious to what they're doing. I think I'm going to put my money on a source book over an adventure or a campaign, I think. But then that entails quite a lot, because as we said at the beginning of this episode, with the legacy content now sort of been put away, what does that mean for other things that were in that? So, for example, they had a whole thing about Yuan-Ti, they had kobolds, they obviously had the goblinoids and orcs and stuff like that. They had their laws there as well. Does that mean they're going to completely change this? Because some of them are a little bit problematic in places. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But then that would be cool in a sense of like, could all these classic monsters, beholders, we've covered beholders as well, maybe are they going to get their own book? I don't think so, but I think giants, because there's a lot to them.
Yeah, I think a source book maybe for a primordial game is probably what's coming, or something like that. So maybe it's not a campaign. And as with all source books now, it's part source book, part campaign guide, isn't it? It's like, it sort of like sets you up with something probably a bit like Strixhaven and a bit like the Feywild one that's gone out of my head.
Wild Beyond the Witchlight.
Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which is maybe more campaigny, I guess. But
it introduced the concept of Domains of Delight, which
exactly, and all that sort of stuff.
Thank you so much, Hamilton, for talking with me. Me being very excited about giants.
Yes. I very much enjoyed it, 100%. Yeah.
Let's talk about what have you got coming up? What projects can we find you doing when you're not on DM's Book Club?
Well, exactly. Well, as I hinted at, so like Morkborg has been recorded and the first one has been edited today. I've just got to. I'm doing the music, the score for it, because I'm very particular. So not personally writing, I might do some, as I've done with a lot of my shows, I have written a piece of music for them, but let's see, we'll see about that.
I love the fact, again, folks who've watched the show briefly say, the fact that, Hamilton, you've got a whole drum kit behind you. I'm not gonna write it, and I'm just like going, drum kit.
Yeah, no, I mean, as in, I've written the theme tune. I made the theme tune to Dragon's Duel. I made the theme tune to Shattered Realm and Darkest Timeline. So Why won't I make the theme tune to Mockboard? I don't know. Maybe I will. But point is, I'm going to be scoring it the next couple of days with some music. I'm just perfecting it. So I'm not going to give a date as to when it comes out yet, because I don't want to do that and disappoint. I want to, when it comes out, you can find it on all my links at Dragon DM.
I'm so excited for it. It's like you showed me a couple of the proofs. Like you showed me a picture and sent me a clip, and I was like, "Fuck, that is so cool."
I'm so excited by it.
I'm so excited by
so pumped by it. And then Pirate Borg, as I said to you earlier, the session 0 last night got a similar cast. Some faces you'll know using our focusing around a backstory of one of our characters from Shattered Realm, Frankie. But if you haven't watched any of our other shows, it doesn't really matter. It's just us playing pirates, and that'll be another short form show that we will do. So I'm looking forward to that. And writing up my Spelljammer Bowies in space. So
Bowies in space.
As in multiple Bowies in space instead of Bowie is in space, if that makes sense. So it's Bowies. So there's appropriate apostrophe use in that. It will make sense when you see it.
So many apostrophes.
Yes. That so far at the moment is all you can see me doing at the moment. How about yourself? What, where, when, how are you doing?
How am I doing? Oh, that's a different podcast entirely. But yes, who am I? My name is Fiona. What am I? I'm a podcaster. Oh my god, and an improviser. Where am I? I'm so glad you asked. What am I rolling? Is a twice monthly RPG one-shot podcast.
I love this so much.
I'm still working on the copy for this. But yeah, where is a twice monthly RPG one-shot podcast show where we talk and play different RPG systems, and it's so lovely to have a co-host who's also been we love Dungeons and Dragons, don't get us wrong, folks, we absolutely love it. We have a whole show dedicated to it, but we also dedicate our own time to doing other things because we love that sort of thing. I've had a couple of interviews with some Free League stuff. I've just organized some more interviews with some Free League stuff, hopefully going to get on the writer behind the Alien RPG. I've just been in contact with them. Very excited for that. We've got the folks behind Into the Odd, which is coming out soon. Remastered because they've taken that over. There's another.
When are you going to get us that Blade Runner one? When are you going to get us that Blade Runner one?
That's not out till the end of the year, unfortunately. But hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm on some list.
You know what? If you want to get me on where, and you want to get me on a particular where, if you do, not hinting again. Not hinting again. Just saying, I'm just making the note.
I will. Don't worry. As soon as I get the review copy, if I get the review copy, sorry, I think they'll be like, "Hey, Hamilton, are you free?"
Good. All right, cool. I'm up for that.
That's fine. And then the other person that hopefully we'll be interviewing is a couple of people behind the game designer behind Vasan, which is a folklore RPG.
Big fan of this.
It's very cool and very beautiful. They've got a supplement coming out which is focused on the British Isles and Ireland folklore specifically, which is very exciting.
Yeah, I'm interested in that actually because I think it's as much as D&D is very Eurocentric, and I think that it's very Eurocentric with an American eye, if that's probably the way to put it. And I think what is interesting, there's a lot of folklore, Celtic as much as Britannic, I guess is the term, Breton, that has been forgotten, and I think has got some really fun things in it that I think will be really interesting to really delve into because as I said, it's the Americanization of Eurocentric fantasy has actually left behind a lot of things that I think will be interesting as much as as any really.
And it's true again. Bring it back to D&D very quickly. Like obviously a lot of the stuff we've looked at recently, so like stuff on the bonus episodes like Al-Qadim, which is more of a sort of American / Hollywood view of sort of what used to be mythological Persia and all that sort of thing, and obviously that's not how it is now. But now we're shifting away and having stuff like the Radiant Citadel coming out, which is obviously always different people's perspectives. And I know we're still like a month away at time of recording for it to come out. But I can't wait.
Fiona. We sit here and have been sitting here recording this, and I'm going to suggest we may have a 30-minute recording afterwards because who has just been sent the first chapter, because we can unlock the first chapter of the Radiant Citadel right now. 7 minutes ago. 7 minutes ago, it's there.
Oh my god. Okay. I'm gonna wrap up this episode very, very quickly then. So so that's where there's some other RPG systems. There's some good ones.
We play games. We'll see you later.
Replay game, see you later. Finally, if you're interested in having an offer code, we are sponsored. We have an offer code for Third Space Gaming, which is your friendly local game store in Burnley, where you can get 10% off your first order, and that could be Terrain, that could be the pre-order for Radiant Citadel, it could be a whole ton of things. But go check them out; they're really, really lovely, and they support the show. Yeah. Until next time, I'm speeding up very quickly so I can rush to my email. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will speak to you, see you next time. See you on the flip side. That's so funny. Whoa!